Hey, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Chris Satterthwaite, General Manager for the AWS Retail Restaurants and CPG team, and very, very pleased to invite you to our Big Ideas session. Today, you have two of the innovators in the industry that are going to be sharing what they're doing to drive AI to transform their businesses. It's all the way from the internal processes up to customer satisfaction as well. And I've got to ask, who do we have in the house that loves Coach or Kate Spade? All right, I see lots of Coach Kate Spade. Well, you're in luck. We have Tapestry who is going to be here, and they're going to share some of their stories and what they're doing to revolutionize enterprise knowledge management. And they're doing this across all of their 18,000 plus employees. Also curious, how many pet owners do we have in the house? All right, very good. Love our pets. So we have Nestle Purina, who is going to be with us today as well. And they're going to talk about the way that they're using AI to transform the pet care across the 2 million of their pet owners. So with that, please join me first in welcoming to the stage Tapestry, Fabio Luzzi, Chief Data and Analytics Officer. Welcome, Fabio.
Thank you, Chris.
What up?
How are you?
And thank you.
Over here.
And next up, we're going to invite Annie Scharenberg, who is the Director of Architecture and Services for Nestle Purina North America. Welcome, Annie.
Hello.
All right. All right. Well, welcome, and thank you so much for making the time and sharing your stories. So today, we're just going to have a nice little conversation, and would love to see if we can start with, we talk about AI a lot, but what were some of the challenges that you were actually trying to solve for that led you to even think about using AI? And Fabio, we'll start with you first, and maybe you can also share what some of those use cases were that you were also investigating.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So a little bit of an introduction for people that is not super familiar with Tapestry. House of fashion brand. We own Coach and Kate Spade. Very traditional retail and fashion company. Coach has been around for a long time. But two things that, I always remind people when we talk about data and AI is that we are obviously retail as a very complex, retail fashion is a very complex, value chain. It's a set of interconnected systems, from planning all the way to customer satisfaction. There is a lot that happens in between. I always like to think about our value chain as a relay race, right? Where each business unit pass the baton to the next one, right? The decision, obviously it's not a super linear process. There is a lot of circular feedback loop that happens in between. But imagine, right, from setting the target with planning and finance, merchandising, buying, supply chain, logistics, marketing, sales, stores, you can imagine the complexity. And the common denominator is data. So that combination of complexity of the value chain and the fact that we are a data-rich company, for us, to answer your question, Chris, so why AI? AI simply help us extract that customer signal. So, a few years ago, we actually made a substantial shift in the way we think about decision making, right? We shifted from being a pure product organization to being more of a customer-centric organization. So with that in mind, complexity, data-rich organization, we went into AI years ago to help us extract that value perception from the customer and being able to leverage it across decision making all across the supply chain, the value chain, from planning all the way to customer satisfaction. And one use case that we focus particularly in is inventory. So we all know in retail and fashion, decisions that you make upstream when it comes to what to buy, how much of it, where to make it, where to place it, when, has a lot of impact downstream in customer satisfaction and financial performance. So the vision from the beginning was always to being able to detect that customer value and leverage it to help us plan, manage, and flow inventory. So from planning all the way to execution, with obvious impact in inventory flow, inventory turnovers, and margin expansions. But one thing is that, from the beginning, we always thought to be able to do this, we have to approach it not just as a single use case, isolated use case. It's more as exhaustive enterprise level capability. That's why from early on, we've been investing a lot in setting up those AI data ready, as they say now, capabilities. So, we invested a lot on that. We now have a data fabric. What we call a data fabric is a patented solution, and it's helping us do exactly that. Scale data and AI all across the value chain, with a big focus on inventory, to answer your question.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And also, thanks for having the right inventory available. I know when my wife wanted that Brooklyn bag, you had it right there ready to roll, and she loves it. Thank you.
One bag.
That's right. All right, next, Annie, I'd like to ask the same question of you. I mean, what were some of the challenges that you were trying to solve with AI?
Yeah, so I hope most of you know who Purina is, but we are not just Purina one brand. We're Purina kind of a house of brands, right? We have over 25 brands across our dog food, cat food, litter, and treats businesses. So when we're trying to talk to consumers, it gets really, really tricky to give a relevant message to all of those consumers in one experience or one email or one activation. So how many people in the room have a dog? Okay. How many people in the room have a cat? How many have both? So I have to talk to all of you in one experience, right? And so you can see between cats and dogs, it's going to get very tricky. They're very different animals. It's a different experience for pet owners. So how do we make sure we have what we need to be relevant to you in the moment that you want to interact with our brands? So we kind of started with the same challenge I feel like probably everybody in this room is facing, which is messy, fragmented, inconsistent data. Right? So when we're looking at a user profile, if we don't know if you have a cat or dog, or we don't know if you have both, or we don't know that your dog is a senior dog or a puppy, then we can't give you relevant information. So we can't talk to you the way that you need to be talked to best care for your pet, and that's our mission. So the most important thing and the first challenge that we had to get in front of is cleaning up our data. That started with data collection. So making sure that we're collecting data in a way that's consistent, in a way that allows us to segment and look at data effectively, in a way that is scaled, in a way that is secure, obviously, most importantly. And that was our biggest challenge kind of walking into it. The second challenge is once we have that data, what do we do with it, right? We don't know what our scaled data looks like because it's been so fragmented, it's been so inconsistent. So we started to look at pet data. So that might be species, breed, age of pet, plus user data, right? So retail preferences, dietary preferences for their pet, which people feel really strongly about, by the way, as well as receipt data, things like that, IoT data. We have devices in homes. How do we combine all of that data together to start to create models where we can talk to you effectively and, more important, relevantly in your visit, in your email, in your whatever way we're interacting with you?
Oh, that's awesome. No, thank you so much. And again, as all the pet owners here in the house, we really appreciate you make amazing products, Purina, Fancy Feast, Friskies, you name it. So thank you on behalf of all of us. And by the way, those Fancy Feast commercials are so good. I know there were points that I've wanted to order some and pick up a fork and test it myself, but didn't do that. No, don't do that.
It is complete and balanced, though, if you wanted to.
No, well, so I am curious because you called out some of the challenges and how you wanted to make sure you cleaned up the data. Now, you have lots of choices in the industry to help you. So I'm curious, Annie, maybe you can share, why did you select AWS?
Yeah, so we have a long-standing partnership with AWS. The majority of our products are operating on AWS, but more importantly, we have the ability to start to test some of these things really quickly and affordably through our partners with AWS. So the first thing that we did was reach out to my friend Elizabeth over there. Elizabeth, raise your hand. So they helped us kind of identify what we could do as far as building a real-time solution that could start cleaning up our consumer data at the point of acquisition. So how do we build one time, and my team's responsible for services, right? Reusable services. We want to build separate products for all of our product teams. So how do we build one service that can collect data across our portfolio of digital products and allow us to meet that goal of consistent, clean data so that we can start getting a real picture of what we're working with? So we used AWS in partnership with ProServe to build out a proof of concept for a single sign-on solution. So basically allowing one API to collect all of the data across all of our properties, and in turn, kind of the user-facing execution of that being a universal profile. So think about when you're kind of going from property to property. So I'll give you some examples. Petfinder.com, which is like an adoption site, or Purina.com, which is where our food brands are, or Petivity, which is our IoT brand. As you're going to those products, you're creating an account, right? And you're putting in your data and your pet data. You're kind of building a whole profile. And what we did is you build that once now, and you can use persistent credentials to get you into any of our products. So you're building a pet profile once, and we know how you're interacting with all of our brands. You're uploading a loyalty receipt, and you're attaching it to a pet. So we know exactly what you're buying for that pet, when you're buying it, the frequency, where you're buying it, more importantly. And we can retarget you with all of the things that we want to target you with. So SSO was a really great example. The POC actually powered 2 million users. So even though it was a POC, it actually got us to scale pretty quickly. We were able to prove the value to the company, make sure that consumers understood it. And we have now scaled that even beyond. We have over 5 million users running through that solution. And then secondly, and my favorite one is something we call match transparency. And so we have a recommendation tool. So if you come to the site, you'll enter in your pet's data and your preferences as a pet owner. And we match that up using Bedrock with our product dossiers and some behavioral data. And we built models that help us deliver that recommendation back to you in a consumer voice, right? So, or in a user voice, human voice. And that basically allows you to build trust and credibility in what we're telling you. So my dog's name is Kitty. I'm allergic to cats, so we have best of both worlds in one pet. So I can go through, I can put in all of my preferences, my pet's information, and when it spits back that product recommendation to me, it's telling me exactly why. Kitty is a mini poodle that is active, so she needs higher protein, and it's talking to me like I am a consumer, not a very kind of generic recommendation. So that's my favorite example of it, but AWS has just given us the ability to kind of pick and choose what we need when we need it and really prove value over time so we can start small and build from there.
I love that. Thank you. And by the way, dog named Kitty, I got lots of questions on that one, but we'll save that for after.
Talk later.
That's right. No, thank you. And actually, Fabio, same question. I mean, you had lots of choices as well. Why did you select AWS to help you?
So, okay, here this is where I have to say nice things about AWS. Okay. No, seriously, we've been using AWS for many, many years. But from a chief data analytics officer perspective, so the question was never which technology, to be honest, right? The question was, how do we set up an environment where AI can grow, scale, and keep delivering value over time? So, when we think in terms of platform, we mostly think about a platform that can give us three things. One is enterprise scale. So as Annie said, scalability is one very important element. Second is governance. And third is speed to value. So, AWS is being giving is exactly that, the ability to leverage services and capabilities to bring the value where we want it and be able to scale with governance, security. And, I always I ask permission to make this example before today, but I like to think of AWS as a Home Depot of technology, right? So you have the database aisle, you have the API aisle, so you can just go pick and choose and connect your services and build whatever solution. But the key here, as Annie said, being able to build capabilities that can scale. So speed to value. You don't have to build every time the same foundations, every time you have a new use case, or every time you have to scale. So yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you.
And then mostly, so one important thing, so AWS, because of the modularity and flexibility, can really help us focus on business value and customer experience. So we don't have to worry about managing infrastructure, security, and we don't have to worry about rebuilding the foundations every time we want to scale or activate a new use case. So, by design, we try to stay away from one-off solutions and try to be forced into, narrow architectures. So, always that flexibility to scale.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing that, and we appreciate the partnership. So I want to shift, and Fabio, I'll stay with you on this one because you talked about scaling. And so maybe can you talk a little bit more about, as you went through your implementations, how did you actually scale? And what was your experience there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously it's not an easy thing, right? So data analytics, AI, as you all know, it requires a lot of, convincing, adoption, trust. So we always been very intentional when we think about scale. And I think one of the key things is that, we try to stay away from individual and one-off solutions. We always try to design solutions thinking of ability to reuse them in a way that the business can reuse them and scale and with trust. So I think scalability, when it comes to scalability and AI, but also data and analytics, leveraging data, especially when it's not a tech native technology, tech savvy company, trust and adoption is so being very close to the business. At the end of the day, the success of AI, it's measured by the ability to embed it into business processes. So being very close to the business problem and the moment the decision takes place. So I think one key thing is that design the solutions always with the user and the business stakeholders from the design all the way through the cycle to the development cycle. So, keep always the user and the business in the loop as you design and develop. And obviously governance and trust. Obviously the user and the business stakeholders will never use AI if they don't trust it, if they don't know the boundaries, and if they don't feel that it's like natural, it comes natural as part of their workflow. So, always keep the business close, governance and trust. Those are, I think, the main thing for scalability.
Great advice. Thank you. And I'm curious within that, what were some of the results that you actually saw once you scaled some of those solutions?
Yeah, so across the years, I've been in Tapestry for over 8 years now. So we've been setting up these capabilities and designing them from the beginning. So across the years, we've seen a strong, substantial reduction in lost sales, what we call lost sales, and expansion of margins. Always at the end of the day, helping the customer find what they value more often. So increasing SKU productivity and having an impact on the P&L. So those, I would say, are the main KPI that we were able to impact over the years. And then, so from a financial perspective, through different solutions, focusing a lot on inventory, but through demand forecasting capabilities, price sensitivity models, store tiering capability to help optimize assortment, and being able to measure that value perception of the customer to help, as I said, implement and manage that inventory flow. But from an internal perspective, also the success is measured by the adoption. So, the adoption, we've seen increased adoption over the years, where now the decision makers spend less time, fetching and looking for information and data, and spend more time acting on it. So, yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And Annie, I'll ask you a similar question. So what was your experience with the implementation across Nestle Purina?
Yeah, so I work in a department called New Business Models. And so as you can imagine, the team is really kind of energized by new ideas, innovation. It's a highly technical team. So they are constantly wanting to do things when new stuff comes out. So you talk about generative AI, you talk about agentic, and people get so jazzed and so excited, which is great. But we need to make sure that that's contained, and that we're making focused and strategic decisions around where we're investing time and resources. So what we did is we kind of established 3 use cases, around consumer data, operations, and recommendations. And we allowed the team to kind of explore in those spaces, right? We're going to put some foundations in place so that you guys can stay focused and we can start iterating on these foundations that we've already built versus kind of going broad and wide and starting to build lots of little things that may work, may not work. And sometimes that's okay, right? But we don't want to be investing a lot of time and kind of the horizontal. We want to be going vertical at first. So we kind of created this like freedom in the box strategy, which some people might roll their eyes when you say freedom in a box because people hate that, but it actually worked really well for us. And it gave the team the chance to kind of explore those ideas and be innovative and look at new technology and look at new ideas, but do it in a way that it benefited our strategic intent, right? So when we start to look at consumer data, one of the results that we saw is kind of people focusing on how you can get more complete profiles with those consistent acquisition tools. And we saw a 60% increase in complete pet profiles because people were focused in that space. So I think choosing a few use cases and then letting people kind of use their imagination or use their innovative or creative ways of thinking to help build on that use case and iterate really is an effective way of kind of giving that freedom in a box. Maybe we don't use that terminology though.
I love that. No, thank you. And 60% increase in pet profiles. I mean, that's impressive. Any other results that you found that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, so we have a few really exciting stats that we use. So the 60% completion of pet profiles, that's over 4 million pet profiles. So that's quite a bit of data for activation media to people to use beyond what we do, which is really technical architecture, right? So the media teams, the marketing teams are really excited about that. The match transparency initiative that I talked about earlier, we saw a 20% conversion by creating a more human voice behind those recommendations. So from going to, your recommendation is just pro plan chicken and rice for high protein to, Kitty needs more protein because she's an active dog that lives in a house with children and is running around a lot. And that's why we need this product for this dog. We saw a 20% conversion and people going to, we don't have direct to consumer, but clicking where to buy is kind of our signal for conversion in that instance. And then we actually saw a pretty significant increase in on our operations side. We saw, I want to say something like a 30% increase in output from what we were kind of rolling through there, really allowing people to use things like Claude in their workflows, in their generation of code. And so we saw a really significant operational output in there as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's real business impact. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm curious, I mean, we've got a lot of people here in the audience, and some may be earlier in the AI journey. So Annie, I'll start with you on this one, and this will be our final question before we wrap. I'm wondering, what advice would you actually share with those that might be newer in the AI journey that would actually help them going forward?
Okay, so it's a little cliche, but start small. Think about, where you want to go and start to work backwards. One of the things that, as soon as generative AI and agentic AI became a really, really hot topic, I was getting so nervous because people were getting so excited and thinking so big and running straight to agentic. How do we get agents in place? How do we reduce workforce thinking about this specific function? How do we get these insights and analytics from an agent? How do we have the agent start to do some of this work over here or automate some of this work? And I think one of the most important things is understanding that it's not a 0 to 60 scenario, right? You cannot go from nothing to agentic. So I think starting small, starting with your foundations, focus on your output and work backwards so that you can start to identify barriers or gaps that you need to fill before you can get all the way there is a smart way to approach it. It also gives you the ability to slowly build skills within your workforce, right? So they're starting with small POCs, they're learning along the way, they're building expertise. And by the time we get to end of 26, early 27, we'll be moving into an agentic space, right? We've done the work, we've put the foundation in place, and then we can start really even driving more results. So I think staying in a space where you're starting small and focusing on your outcome is really important.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you, Annie. All right, and Fabio, I'm going to ask you the same question. So again, for those newer in the AI journey, what advice would you provide that would actually help?
So, yeah, great question. So, first of all, I agree with Annie, and I can add to that maybe a couple of things. So, this is a great question. It's not easy. So, I always think about it like, what's the recipe for success? I would say maybe two things I would pick out of many. Obviously, there's no one silver bullet. It's always a combination of different things. But number one, again, I think it's very important to understand that AI, just like any other technology, it's not the outcome, right? AI is a tool. The outcome is your business strategy. The outcome is your specific KPI that you're trying to impact. So always start with a business strategy. Always try to what you are trying to optimize, what you're trying to change, what you're trying to transform, and then work your way backwards. So AI may be the solution, may as well be not be the solution. So AI is not the outcome. AI is a tool. Always start with a business. And, also, as I mentioned before, work together with a business. Often people don't like to change, right? It's just human nature. We are used to do things in a certain way, and, it's very hard to visualize the outcome of new capabilities, new solutions. So always work together with a business in ideating, designing, but also during the development cycle, because it's proven that, when you do that, then the adoption at the end of the journey, it's easier because the user, it's almost a known event, right? When you release that solution, the user, it's a non-event because they've been involved since the beginning. So always close to the business. And then another thing that I would say is if you really want to scale AI and embed it in your business operations, you need to think about the foundations. AI is not a shortcut. So you're not going to really move the needle and transform when you work on isolated and individual use cases. It's more about how can you scale across the enterprise. So those data, now they call it AI-ready data capabilities. Having a strong data foundations, it's important for scaling. So thinking about that foundational capability to be able to scale it across the enterprise.
Love that. Wow, you just dropped so much wisdom and knowledge just in one session. Thank you. And a couple things that just stuck. I mean, you talked about, set the data foundation, and, Annie and Fabio, you both called that out. Starting from the business and actually focusing on the business and the actual outcomes, and then using the technology to enable that. And there are a couple things that also I'll walk away and stick with. Was it data freedom in a box? And a dog named Kitty. Those two are going to stick with me. So definitely looking forward to hearing more about that. And with that, just want to say a huge thank you for what you do across both Nestle, Purina, and Tapestry. Let's give it up for Annie and Fabio. All right.
Thank you.
Well, great job. And everybody enjoy the rest of NRF and enjoy the show.